It is Thursday night and time to talk college football. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, talking about Georgia and South Carolina, a huge one in the SEC Eastern Division. Right here, very early in the 2018 campaign. In week two, of course, the Bulldogs had their way in Athens last year. They get the return trip to Columbia this week. We got Savannah Lee Richardson on the line from Bulldog Illustrated. Then at 7:45. We've got Will Gunter coming up from 107.5 The Game in Columbia. So it's all Georgia, South Carolina talk for the next hour plus. Savannah, how you doing tonight?
Good. It's been an exciting week. Short week with the holiday on Monday, but it's flown by. Ready to get to Columbia on Saturday morning and see what these two teams have to do.
Okay. Exciting week.
Oh, yeah. It's always an exciting week. I'm like one of the only media people at Georgia that just absolutely love going to practice every single day, talking to all the players. It just fires me up. Tuesday afternoon, we got our first practice of the week, and we were walking down to where they practice outside, and there was just like electricity surrounding the team, and you can just feel like the energy and how excited everybody is. And that's what I live and breathe for. It's so much fun, and everybody loves a good college football atmosphere, and to have it at practice, it's just a good feeling.
Electricity surrounding the team. Any more so on Tuesday or this week than any other week, any other time that you've been to practice?
No, I feel like it's like that every week, especially during a big game. Last week there was a little bit of a buzz, but it felt more like a business deal. They were going to come in and do what they were supposed to do against Austin Peay and then move on to South Carolina. I will say, like, you could tell that the team started working on South Carolina last week. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus or anything because Kirby's always like, we focus 1 week at a time, but we overheard, them prepping for South Carolina last week, and some other people have mentioned it as well, but it's always a buzz surrounding them because Kirby Smart, Jim Chaney, James Coley, Tucker, all of them are constantly on the guys' butts and just pushing them and pushing them and pushing them, and so it's just electric.
All right. We got Savannah Lee Richardson on the line from Bulldog Illustrated to help us break down the Bulldogs and the Gamecocks in Columbia this Saturday. And you would think that South Carolina needs to win this one to have any chance in the SEC Eastern Division. For some reason, it feels as though if Georgia would somehow slip up and South Carolina win this one, that it's still a long season and South Carolina or Georgia could make up the two games in the loss column. But South Carolina needing to prove themselves and to show that they're ready to challenge. Certainly wasn't it was like a 2-score game. It was still somewhat up in the air, but Georgia was in command, but there was hope for South Carolina sometime early to mid fourth quarter before the Bulldogs put it away. Savannah, do you see anything of what happened last year in Athens translating to this year?
I think so. I think the way that Georgia's going to handle a lot of teams now is they're going to wear them down eventually. Like Alabama, they wear teams out and then they win ball games in the fourth quarter. I think it's going to be a tough environment, a tough game, and South Carolina will likely hang in there till around the middle of the third quarter. But then I think Georgia's depth and talent just takes over, and the Bulldogs handle business and move on to Middle Tennessee next week. I do think that Deebo Samuel and company are all going to challenge this young secondary, but at the same time, there's so much talent. And then even on top of it, a lot of people are like, oh, you lose some guys, and this is your first big challenge. I think the front seven at Georgia and a few of the linebackers that are coming in have enough experience from playing last year behind those top guys that they're going to be able to come in and be confident. Even with the offense, losing Nick Chubb and Sony Michel, DeAndre Swift looks so ready to go. They held him back last week. He hardly even really touched the ball. And then not to mention James Cook. Granted, he is going to have to serve that first half suspension for the stupid targeting call, but he's going to come in the second half and have a pair of fresh legs. And Georgia could probably use that to their advantage. Everybody on South Carolina's defense is going to be, a little tired and slowing down, and then James Cook is just going to be hitting his second wind and being ready to go. I think it's going to be an awesome ball game, probably one of the best of the day. But in the end, I have to go with my Bulldogs, and I'm not even trying to be biased with that. Just paper alone, Georgia's so much more talented than South Carolina.
All right, so James Cook's going to miss the first half of this week. I did not see the play. So you're saying a stupid call. So was it a stupid call because he did a stupid thing, or a stupid call because it was a bad call?
No, it wasn't. When I say stupid call, I mean stupid decision on his part. He, instead of lowering his head into his chest to make the play, he lowered his head a little late, and the helmets collided, and he collided helmets. It was a targeting call. It was a right call by the referees because the kid went down and they had to help him off the field. So in my opinion, it was the right call, but at the same time, it was a stupid decision on James Cook's part. He was just excited and in the moment, but he should have just shoved him down instead of leaning his head into him. But yeah, it's just a bad decision by a freshman.
We are previewing the big game in the SEC Eastern Division this week with Georgia traveling to South Carolina to take on the Gamecocks. Of course, Georgia, the class of the division in the conference last year and winning the SEC, and South Carolina with a nice bounce-back season in their progression under Will Muschamp from 3 wins to 6 to 9 with a bowl victory against Michigan last year. South Carolina fans hoping, some actually believing that they have a legitimate shot to knock off Georgia this season. I'll dive into the live chat here. We've got a number of people on the line already commenting about predictions and storylines concerning the Gamecocks and the Bulldogs. So we've got our guy George, who says that let Fields in the game, let him run for 300 and pass for 175.
I couldn't. My computer glitched just a little. Can you repeat that for me?
So George on the live chat would like to see Justin Fields in the game to pass for 175 and run for 300.
Wow, that's a bold prediction. I think Jake Fromm's definitely going to get the start. Jake Fromm's going to be in control of the team. I think there probably might be 1 or 2 packages for Justin Fields, but that's going to solely depend on how much control Georgia has in the ball game. If Georgia's up like by 2 or 3 touchdowns, I definitely think Kirby Smart and company will bring in Justin to get him some good SEC playing time, but I don't think that a 300-yard rushing game or even 175 passing is even remotely accurate. I think just Jake Fromm will probably end up like passing for well over 100 yards, but you're also going to see DeAndre Swift likely get up there as well. It's going to be an even – if Georgia can run the ball, it's going to be an evenly matched run and pass ratio, but I also think that Jake Fromm's going to have to make some plays in the air. Really didn't have to last week, but when he did, it was nice. The touchdown catch to Mecole Hardman. I think that was Fromm. It might have been Fields. They played it. They interacted so much. Anyway, there's going to be some points scored by the wide receivers. I'd like to see Demetrius Robertson come in and really do something more than just a 172-yard touchdown run, but that would be nice as well. There's just so many guys you can mention. It's hard to narrow it down.
So the ball didn't hit the turf too much on Saturday against Austin Peay. Jake Fromm, 12 of 16 for $157 and 2 touchdowns. Justin Fields came in. Nice little debut for him on 7 for 8 for 63 yards and a touchdown. Matthew Downing even got to throw 3 passes. And Demetrius Robertson, of course, the much anticipated big play wide receiver coming back home from Cal back to Georgia, caught a 72-yard touchdown pass.
It was a 72 touchdown run.
Oh, touchdown.
It was more of a –
my apologies.
Yeah,
I got to admit, I did not see a play from the Austin Peay game. That's the one I'm sitting out with all sorts of other action on Saturday. That was a slightly closer games out there that I didn't catch any of the Austin Peay. So I'm looking at the box score here and see, okay, Demetrius with 72-yard touchdown run. Little jet sweep. What did they do there?
It was kind of like a toss sweep, and he hit the edge and it was gone. And in all honesty, he has another gear. I was watching his film from Cal. That's not even remotely as fast as he can go. It was funny. Terry Godwin, he was supposed to be hurt. Well, not hurt, but just he came out. Well, he didn't play at all in the Austin Peay game to continue resting and rehabbing because he had a knee issue this spring, so he didn't play at all on Saturday, but he was running down the sidelines with Demetrius, and Demetrius just passed him and then some. It was a nice play call. Kirby Smart said that wasn't even the initial play when they got into the huddle, so the quarterback called the audible and made the right call there, but it's exciting. The kid's fun to watch. I get sideline credentials this season, so getting to see it up close and personal, it just completely gives another feel than sitting in the press box, but when he flies by, you better be you better not blink, because if you do, you'll miss him.
George, believe me, I know when you're exaggerating. He was the author of the 300-175 game by Justin Fields. George is a longtime viewer, call in to the show last night. And George, I know you're exaggerating, but I know that you're also wanting to see Justin Fields in the game and believe Georgia is going to have no problem with South Carolina. We got Savage Dogs with a 37-20 score for UGA. Believes Fields will come in for third down yardage and goal line situations. Zoom Play is calling your team, Savannah, the second fastest team in college football to TCU, Wisconsin and Clemson. So let's understand that Zoom Play is a TCU fan.
Okay. Well, I haven't gotten to watch TCU this year yet, but they're definitely one that I enjoy watching out from, the Texas teams and in that area. But that's a big compliment in my opinion, because most Big 12 teams are very fast and very elite on the offense. And so I'll take that as a compliment.
George says Georgia wins over South Carolina 49-13. Prince goes Bulldogs by 17. And there you go. So Jonathan Ledbetter, senior defensive lineman, reported by a number of sources as having some type of ankle injury, so that he most likely makes the game, still plays. Do we believe? Do we have any idea?
This was reported Wednesday that he was seen on campus with crutches, or a couple of people have reported, and I overheard another media member talking about, well, someone saw him on campus earlier today with crutches on. However, he did practice yesterday with an ankle brace on. He was running through the drills. He did seem a little limited, of course, but if you just sprained your ankle, I'm assuming you would be a little limited. However, I don't think that the trainers are too worried about it, or if they were, he would not be practicing. So I think he makes the trip. Don't know how much actually playing time he'll get, depending on how severe that injury is. But if it's not that bad, I have a feeling they'll be taping it up and sending him out there to make some plays.
So, Savannah, we talked about it a number of times during the offseason. The recruiting has been phenomenal. Some of the best classes in the history of college football since the recruiting rankings have been compiled. This Georgia team obviously came within a play of winning a national championship. They lose a ton of veteran presence, led by Roquan Smith and the two backs on the offensive side and some others. Based on what you saw last week, I know it's Austin Peay, and you have to kind of prorate the performance to a certain extent because of the level of competition. But what did you see out of this 2018 class, and maybe the 17 class of some of the players that didn't see the field a whole lot last fall?
I have to say that I thought Georgia put together a very well-coached ball game against Austin Peay. I mentioned earlier how it would seem like a business trip, coming in, doing what they're supposed to do, but not giving much to the eye. It was a very vanilla offense, very vanilla defense. However, Georgia did play 85 different players last weekend alone, including I think it's 17 or 18 true freshmen got snaps. Tyson Campbell started at corner for the Bulldogs. He was the only true freshman to get a start, but if I have to say a word, it's speed. Speed on the offensive side of the ball, speed on the defensive side of the ball. It's just an elite talent level that I've never seen as a Georgia fan. And even going back to last season, we were there, but at the beginning of the season, it took a few games to really get this team's, connection going. And I think that this team has a connection already. Most of the guys who are leaders and who are the, upperclassmen are the ones that came in last season and did what they did with the national championship. So now I think they're carrying it over. Ben Cleveland and J.R. Reed and Jonathan Ledbetter already said that this team's already creating their own identity. They're excited for this season, and they're ready to put a mark on college football of their own, instead of being in, Sony and Nick's and Roquan's shadows. But speed, I thought the offensive line looked not incredible, but they did a good job. There were some times where, they missed cues and did this, and Isaiah Wilson had some miscues there and everything. But for them overall, I thought that he did a great job for his first start as the right tackle. Ben Cleveland got some reps there as well, and he did what he was supposed to do. That's a big dude. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen Game of Thrones and seen the Mountain in that TV series, but he is like the southern version of the mountain, and I wouldn't want to piss him off at all. But yeah, speed and talent. There's just so much talent. It's just I could go and probably talk to you for an hour just solely about last week because I hate to admit this, but I've rewatched the game probably 5 times now. Just I had to write an article about the true freshman, so I watched it a couple of times to film stuff on the true freshman. But then I went back and tried to see like Ben Cleveland and Isaiah Wilson and these sophomores and juniors who are coming in trying to get at that leader, that starting role and being a significant person on the field. So I've watched it a lot, and it's just I like what I see. I like where we're heading.
So sitting through 45-0 4 or 5 times, I give you all the credit in the world for that. But that's kind of your job. You're the Georgia girl. You are the beat writer. You're the gal on the sidelines with the credentials that obviously needs to know your Georgia personnel, and you do as well as anyone. I gotta like my position because I watch a whole lot of football, but I watch everybody play once. I'm on to the next game. I'm watching the other game or whatever I DVR'd, but I see everybody one time. And if I didn't catch it then I probably won't catch it at all. Got Savannah Lee Richardson on the line from Bulldog Illustrated. It's Georgia. It's South Carolina. It's SEC Eastern Division on the line. You would think, especially for the Gamecocks, it's unimaginable to anyone, I believe, that they could possibly lose this game and then make up 2 games. And when you say 2, obviously they would need the tiebreaker. Therefore, they would need to surpass Georgia in the standings. And obviously, the same holds true for the Bulldogs, but it's just less conceivable that South Carolina could maintain a lead on Georgia with the win on Saturday. So South Carolina, it seems like a must-win for the division championship. For Georgia, not so much. In terms of math, it's dead even. They're both 1-0. They're both 0-0 in the SEC, and this is the deal. But just talking about how it's perceived is that Georgia's on another plane still than South Carolina. Our guy Donovan Robinson had brought up here in the chat something that Savannah and I talked about before we came on tonight, and that's the DeAndre Baker comments coming out of the mouth of Deebo Samuel, who's an elite wide receiver, is one of the most exciting players in college football. But being in the position that he's in and his team, I don't know that it's the smartest thing to go off on the Georgia Bulldogs. But your thoughts about Deebo Samuel's comments, and maybe for those who have not heard, if you could clarify what Deebo had to say.
Deebo spoke to the media, I think it was on Tuesday, and a media member asked him what his initial thoughts were of DeAndre Baker, and Samuel said, "Who?" And the guy commented, Georgia's defensive back, and he was like, "Oh, I don't know him." And I find it really hard to believe that Deebo Samuel doesn't know who DeAndre Baker is, because he tackled him a few times in his career at South Carolina and in DeAndre Baker's career at Georgia. Pretty sure the two know each other quite well. And I just thought, in a sense, it's disrespectful, because whenever we ask Georgia players about another team or another person, like another player, they give you an answer like, "Oh, so-and-so is very physical, very tough. He can do this, this, and this." But for Deebo to just like, "Oh, I don't know him," that's just kind of like, you're trying to dig a hole that you're not going to do much with. Like I said, it's disrespectful. I know that the two know each other for a fact. My photographer, or my boss, Greg, has multiple pictures of DeAndre Baker tackling Deebo Samuels in one of the games. And so it's just, there was a bunch of Georgia media members throwing pictures that they have of Baker tackling Samuel. So I just, if I can say anything, it's disrespectful. Georgia's not really going to buy into it. Georgia's not going to listen to it. Georgia's keeping to the plan, sticking to working on conditioning, working on managing that crowd noise, and they're not really looking at any outside information. I will say, though, that Georgia, Tori Gurley went on the SEC network and told everybody that was a guaranteed win for South Carolina, and somebody in the staff has plastered that. It's like a piece of paper with Tori Gurley on it and the quote all over like the bottom stairs of the Butts Mural building. I guess it's bulletin board material, but I don't think any of the players really pay any attention to it. They're just ready to go out there and play the ball game and handle business.
Yeah, those are stupid comments to say that you're guaranteeing a win. I would have a rule, Savannah. This would be my rule. I've said this many times. If I was a football coach, especially in the NFL, because this happens more in the NFL where guys run off and guarantee wins. I would say that's fine. I would announce to the locker room, this is fine if you want to announce to the media that you're going to guarantee us to win this game. So the only condition on that is if we don't win this game, since you guaranteed that we were going to win this game, since it's a guarantee, that means you forfeit your check for this game. You're going to give us the check for the game because you guarantee to win. Therefore, you did not follow through and cash in the check. Therefore, you didn't pay off on the guarantee. So you got to pay your game check back to the organization because you got to put your money where your mouth is. In college, I guess we can't do that, not split up the scholarship or what we were going to do, or maybe find out something we don't want to find out. So it's South Carolina, it's Georgia, SEC Eastern Division, biggest game to start play there. Maybe there are some big ones out there in the next couple months. Georgia, Florida would come to mind, of course. Maybe the Gators can challenge. We shall see. I think they're pretty much in the same class at this point as South Carolina, but we shall see. They've got a game at home against Kentucky as a 2-touchdown favorite against the Wildcats coming up this week. So besides what you've heard from the players, Savannah, what have you heard from the fans? Do Gamecock fans seem to be pretty confident as well?
My aunt and I watch Paul Feinbaum religiously, and we have never heard so many Gamecock fans just call and make all these bold predictions and how they're going to whoop Georgia's tail and stuff. And I just think it's interesting. I don't know if they have seen some stuff that the experts haven't seen, or they're just confident. I mean, it's a new year. It's a new football season. Everybody deserves to be excited about their football team. But at the same time, when you put the two schools together, there's a definite talent gap. I don't even know the exact amount of 5 and 4 stars that Georgia has on their team. Granted, stars don't matter when you get to the next level. But at the same time, they played 17 true freshmen on Saturday. And those 17 true freshmen, not all 17, but at least probably 10 of them might see playing time on Saturday. And they're elite, they're fast, and they're ready to go. And I give South Carolina credit for their defensive line. I give South Carolina credit for their wide receivers. They're a very talented team. Will Muschamp has done a great job. But there's Kirby, I don't know how to put it in exact words. It's just Kirby Smart did this all last season. There's a lot, going into the Mississippi State game. I don't remember a lot of people really giving Georgia a chance, and Georgia just came in and handled business. And I think that's what's going to happen. In all honesty, if I'm just going to be a person, I know I'm a journalist, but at the same time, it's just okay, South Carolina fans, we get it. You think you're going to win, but stop talking junk until you get to the football field. It's just you haven't done anything to really talk junk. So it's just, I'm ready for the noise to be quiet. I really am. And ready for, the regular Alabama people to just start calling back on Paul.
Well, our guy, NCIS Fanatic 21 on the live chat is warning you not to watch too much Paul Feinbaum.
Everybody tells me all the time that I shouldn't watch Paul Feinbaum, but I love Paul. I love what he brings to the game. I love his insight. Yeah, he's a little biased when it comes to Alabama and Tennessee, but at the same time, he respects Georgia. He gives Georgia a lot of credit, and I've always wanted, as one of my career goals is to be, how Laura will sit in with him. Well, I want to sit in with him and work with him at the SEC Network. So I have a lot of respect for Paul.
Just passing along a comment. I'm not really at liberty to make any comments about Paul Feinbaum. I certainly would love to, but I'm not able to do that, unfortunately. So this is Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Like, comment, and subscribe for the very best in college football coverage right here or on Feinbaum. I don't know. You can compare the two. Like, comment, subscribe right here if you love analysis, not just from myself, but from the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the industry. Savannah Lee Richardson talking the Georgia side. Then we get the South Carolina take with Will Gunter from 107.5, the game there in Columbia, South Carolina, in just a few minutes. 8:30, we've got some Iowa State talk with the Cyclones taking on their cross-state rival, Iowa. This Saturday, it was a big 44-41 overtime win last year for the Hawkeyes. And then a ton of USC talk with USC taking on Stanford. Huge game in the Pac-12 this week. Scott Wolf from USC football, and also Alicia De Artola from Reign of Troy. Join us in a couple hours, 9 and 9:30. We'll have Will on this live stream. So we keep it one little tidy South Carolina, Georgia live stream, and then we'll break off and catch the other live streams with Iowa State and USC a little bit later. So, well, you know what the enthusiasm is built around basically is when you hit rock bottom like they did a couple years ago and you win 3 games, and then you up that to 6, and then you win a bowl game and you get to 9, you just think that's going to continue. And just to make a slight correction, Savannah,
sure,
I totally agree with you that the stars don't mean anything for any particular athlete hitting the field. We see 4 and 5 stars blow it and be bust all the time, but the stars do mean something. If you take let's take the top 5 recruiting classes over the last 3 to 4 years. If we looked at the recruiting rankings, and then we just look to see who's winning the most football games in America, the recruiting rankings and the stars do matter.
Yeah, I completely agree. But I always catch myself and always tell myself, that the stars don't matter, because there's a lot of people out there that are just like, the stars don't matter. But I mean, exactly like you said, if you look at the rankings, the last 5 years of the top 5 teams in recruiting and where they are right now, there you will see who's successful in college football. And I don't know South Carolina's rankings in the recruiting or anything like that. They have a great recruiting class coming up. Zach Pickens, a defensive lineman or defensive end from TL Hanna out of South Carolina, is a 5-star for them for the 2019 class, and that was a blow to not get him at Georgia. And Clemson was working for him as well. So the fact that he's going to Gamecock Nation was kind of a dig. But yeah, I mean, Georgia's just out recruited him. I think Kirby Smart is. I don't want to just like go out there and be like, oh, he's smarter, because him and Will Muschamp have worked together. They're friends. They know each other quite well. So I'm excited to see the two. I love always seeing, when coaches get together and see them go head to head, because at a point you got to think that they know how each other thinks. And so it's fun to see them try to outsmart each other on the football field.
Yeah, so Will Muschamp, obviously, with a lot of time in the SEC Eastern Division over the last several years, and the 1 year out of it was over at Auburn as defensive coordinator, and so he thinks his boys are ready to play the Georgia Bulldogs. So since you've seen the one game with some of the new players, and now they're going to get a chance to play their first big game, do you have any personal favorites in this last recruiting class, or even going back to 2017 for some of those guys that didn't see the field much, guys that maybe we need to get a little bit better acquainted with, for those people especially that don't look at the recruiting rankings, and so these guys aren't stars to them coming out of high school. They're just guys that have never played, but guys that could be an impact this season.
On the defensive side, Tyson Campbell and Monty Rice. Tyson Campbell's a true freshman. He is a 6'2", 185 cornerback that can probably play anywhere he wanted to in the secondary. He's highly intelligent on the field. He's got long arms, long stride, and he probably, if I'm correct, is a 4.3, 4.4, 40 time, extremely quick. And he did well last weekend. He had some freshman moments, and he missed some reads here and there. But I have a feeling that they'll have him very prepared this week. Another one on the defense is Monty Rice. He's going to be in where Roquan was last season. You have Natrez Patrick and Jawan Taylor in there as well that are going to be handling most of the inside linebacker work. But Monty Rice has the instinct and the speed similar to Roquan. If not, I think he's a little bit faster on his closing speed than Roquan was. So he's definitely one to circle on everybody's rosters. Moving to the offense, of course, James Cook is one for a lot of people that expected Zamir White to really come out and explode. Unfortunately, he had another ACL tear, so James Cook has really had to step up and be that third, fourth back that Georgia needs. Even Elijah Holyfield has done some serious work this offseason. I know I've given him a really hard time and have not complimented him at all, but I've seen him work his tail off this football season, and he showed some promising stuff this past weekend. This weekend for me is his true test. I know I'm a little person when it comes to if it matters or not, but I'm not going to give him any respect until he can show me that he can be a predominant back against a first string SEC defense. Who else on the offense? Oh, of course, Demetrius Robinson's for sure is somebody that people need to circle. He's going to push himself into those core wide receivers, and Akil Crumpton if I have to round it out on the offense. He excites me. He doesn't miss a ball when it's thrown to him. If it's in his vicinity to reach, or if he can run it down, he's going to catch it. I can probably count on two hands the amount of times I've seen him drop a ball in practice, and he's just as quick as Mecole Hardman and Demetrius Robertson. So there's some guys out there I could keep going. Isaiah Wilson on the offensive line, I think he's going to have a breakout year. And Andrew Thomas, who I hope majority of people know, started all 15 games last year as a true freshman. He has moved to left tackle, and he is all man. He just – I don't know if you saw that video or not on Twitter, Mark, but he at one point in time, he just chunked a person. As a defensive end on Austin Peay. Granted, it is Austin Peay, but he just chunked him. And he looked at out of all of the offensive linemen, him and Lamont Galliard last weekend were probably my two, if I had to give, awards out for who played best.
Just tossed him.
Well, he was, moving outward, trying to protect the quarterback, and just when he got a hold of him, he just, moved him, and the guy just went like not flying, but he just fell to the ground. It looked like he just threw a rag doll. That's what it looked like from the video. But I like it. I like a gritty offensive line. I like an aggressive offensive line, and that's coming with Georgia.
Dennis Wilson on the live chat would like to know whether you miss Malcolm Parrish.
No, I don't miss Malcolm Parrish. I think Kirby Smart and Mel Tucker have done a great job with recruiting the last 2 years and getting in guys that they can trust and they can that understand. Malcolm Parrish was a great player. He did have some great plays, but at the same time, they're just more elite and more talented guys that are there now. I think Georgia's secondary is fixing to go from good to elite. It's going to be similar to a very Alabama-esque defense from now on. As long as Kirby Smart and company are here, it's going to Georgia's defense is going to be Alabama-esque, and it's going to be an elite secondary.
We've got our Miami fan here, Dennis Wilson, on the live chat, who I believe is a bit annoyed and a little jealous. Therefore, he is predicting one Tyson Campbell to be a bust in Athens. But you got to understand, this is Miami fan losing Tyson Campbell, then predicting, the 5-star to be a bust. 4 or 5-star.
He's a 5-star. He was a 5-star quarterback down in South Florida. Georgia swooped in close to the end of all the recruiting aspects of everything, and just they got him on campus late and just really showed him that what Georgia brings to the table, and it fit him perfectly. Don't know how much of a bust he'll actually be for a true freshman getting your first start on day one. On the first game is pretty impressive, even if it is against Austin Peay. Granted, Tyreek McGee was out with an ankle injury. He'll probably be back this week. He's been practicing, but at the same time, he's smart. He sees the field well. He's got very nice length. He's aggressive, but not too aggressive, causing stupid penalties in the secondary. And the biggest thing to me is his intelligence and his speed. He's so good. I hate when people are like, he's going to be a bust. I don't hate it, but it's just that's your opinion. That's awesome. But I don't know if the guy watched the Austin Peay game or not, but the kid did well. Yeah,
in this case, it's not even necessarily an opinion. It's just a hope because of losing the kid. All right. So these are the recruiting rankings for Georgia and South Carolina since 2015. In 2015, Georgia 6, South Carolina 20. In 2016, Georgia 6 and South Carolina 25. 2017, Georgia at 3, South Carolina 21. And then this past recruiting class, Georgia at number 1 and South Carolina 18. So that 2015 class, that would have been Mark Richt's final class, I believe.
Final class. Mm-hmm.
Was number 6 in the country. Let me throw these games out, and you tell me, Savannah, what you remember from these games. So these are Georgia, South Carolina games from the past.
Okay.
So, of course, we talked about last season's game in Athens, 24-10. So 2 years ago, 2016 was a 28-14 Georgia win in Columbia.
That was a Sunday game, correct?
They played on a Sunday. That's right. They played on a Sunday. Yes, it was.
Yeah, they had to play on Sunday because of the hurricane or some kind of big
Yeah.
weather thing. That was Kirby Smart's first season. He was still trying to implement his style of coaching and what he wants his team to be. I think that the fact that Georgia got out of that game with a win was very good because we all saw what losing to Vandy and Tennessee and Tech and what could happen. So it was a win, and it was in the win column. I'm trying to remember. It was tough because they on the day before, the rain delay, and then they decided to reschedule the game, and then maybe it wasn't a rain delay, maybe that was the year before. I don't remember exactly. There's so many games. There's one game where it was like a 4-hour rain delay against South Carolina, and I think that's what ultimately cost Georgia the game, was having to sit around and getting stiff. But 2 years ago, okay.
Savannah, believe me, I'm not quizzing you. I'm just throwing scores out to see if you have any memories from these games. So, yeah, it's just hard to believe. We're only 2 seasons later. We're not even technically quite 2 seasons later because it was only 1 season and then the opener this year. And we are less than 2 years removed from a loss to Ole Miss, 45-14.
Yep.
And then losing to Tennessee, of course, the famous Hail Mary play at the end of the ball game against Tennessee, Juwan Jennings. And then the win against South Carolina. Then losing the next 2 games again against Vandy. I remember that one, 17-16. And then losing to the Gators, 24-10. Losing 4 out of 5, less than 2 years ago. That's crazy to think about.
It is really crazy to think about. I try not to think about that season because a lot of people doubted Kirby Smart after that season and didn't know that it was the right call and really didn't buy into his process. But now that we're, a national championship game in and one player winning from national championship, you don't really hear a lot of fans questioning his abilities or questioning his style or what he brings to the table. And it's really incredible. I never thought like this would have been my year to say that Kirby Smart put it sit together and goes to the SEC championship. I never really thought last year that. I mean, there was a chance, but at the same time, playing in Notre Dame, playing Mississippi State at home, playing Auburn away. Of course, we lost to Auburn, but there were so many tough games last season that should have gone the other way, and Georgia persevered and really showed what good coaching and good development does. And so I'm excited to see him continue to develop these young players and continue to develop this team as a whole. He has a sophomore quarterback that just wants to do nothing but please. And I think that's what every coach wants in a quarterback, is someone who just wants to go out there and win for the team and please them.
Mark Richt's final season, they beat South Carolina 52-20, game 3, 2014. That was, of course, when Michelle and Chubb were freshmen. Lost to South Carolina. I remember this game, 38-35 in Columbia. Second game of the year. 2013, they beat an 11-2 South Carolina team, 41-30. The year before that, played South Carolina a little later in the season, lost 35-7 in Columbia in 2012. That was the one loss for the regular season. In 2012. That was Aaron Murray got hurt in that game, correct?
Maybe.
I got stacked a zillion times in that game. That game, if I recall, just Georgia's offensive line just had a horrible game against Jadeveon Clowney and company. And South Carolina killed them 35-7. And then, of course, Georgia finished off the rest of the schedule and went to the SEC championship game.
And lost to Alabama.
There you have it. Good stuff. Savannah Lee Richardson joining us, Bulldog Illustrated. Join her there for Georgia football coverage. Join us here for coverage across the college football map. We've got Will Gunter coming up from 107.5, the game in Columbia, South Carolina. Savannah, we appreciate it. You enjoy the game. Remember, since you're on the sidelines, especially on those toss sweeps or those jet sweeps, you got to be ready to get out of the way.
Oh, yeah. I'll have my camera ready, take pictures, and you'll have to look out for me, Mark. I'm all over the sideline. I
will. I'm unlike the Austin Peay game. I will be watching all this one, unless it's like 42-7 in the fourth quarter. But I'll be watching from the start.
I wouldn't mind a 42-7 in the fourth quarter, but
I was predicting South Carolina to be up 42-7 in the fourth quarter.
Dang, Mark. Thanks.
I'm just kidding, of course.
But no, you have to look out for me because during the Austin Peay game, they showed me during the 5 times I've watched the game. I have seen myself like 4 or 5 times on the sidelines and walking, so you'll have to look out for me with my camera and making sure I get the angles.
Did everyone watching hear that? You will be able to see Savannah on the sideline during the Georgia-South Carolina game. Good
Well, I
stuff.
won't look like this. I'll have my hair down and look presentable, but, y'all may not recognize me then.
All right. Well, once we become big time, Savannah will feel as though she needs to look presentable for us. But we get the football information and insight from her. So that's all that matters.
Oh, yeah.
Savannah, thanks so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the game.
Yep. Thanks.
All right, Savannah. Bye-bye. Savannah Lee Richardson, Bulldog Illustrated, setting us up on the Georgia side of the matchup with South Carolina. And we've had pretty good timing in that Will Gunter's on the line now from 107.5 The Game. I don't know if you can hear me yet, Will.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, Will's got us. Excellent. How you doing tonight?
I'm good. Let me move something real quick here there.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I can talk for a minute or two.
I'm good now.
I know I surprised you here because we're already live. We're already talking of Georgia, South Carolina. So I had the Georgia take on before you. So I just thought I'd roll on through. So my apologies, Will. You're usually used to us connecting. We get to chat for a few minutes. Boom, we hit the record button and we go to work. But I kind of shocked Will tonight, so I did not warn you for that.
That's okay. It's all right. It's big weekend, and I'll even watch some NFL tonight, so we'll be okay, ready to go.
Yeah, I am doing several of these, so I've got the Falcons and the Eagles on the DVR, and I will be watching them a little bit later tonight. One thing I need to do is try to do all I can to correct your audio.
Hold on just a minute.
It's just a little muffled and a little low.
How about now?
That might be a little bit better. I cranked it as much as I can on my end.
I'll admit, I was listening to some music. I've got a 9-year-old's birthday party this weekend that I'm buying stuff for. So I was doing a couple things and happened to look down and was ready to go. So hopefully that helps you a little bit.
Okay, I'm going to ask everybody on the live chat if they're hearing the same thing I am, which is kind of like very low and tinny. So if I'm the only one listening, I can hear what you're saying, but it's just a little bit low. Hey, Will, if you want to jump out and come right back in, I bet that corrects it.
All right, I'll jump out and come right back in.
Georgia, South Carolina talk. Of course, a big week 2 matchup in Columbia. Will Gunter from 107.5 The Game. You can join him on his show, the all-new early game. He gets up a mighty early at 5 a.m. to talk sports. I believe his show actually kicks off at 6 a.m. in the morning, Monday through Friday, 107.5 The Game. And we'll see if South Carolina has enough for Georgia this week. Of course, they're going to have the home field advantage, something they didn't have in getting not necessarily blown out, but handled in a 2-score game by Georgia last season. Let's see what you got for us now, Will.
Any better? Are we any better?
Yeah, it's a little bit better. We'll go with it. People can listen intently. How you doing tonight?
We're good. We're good. Like I said, getting ready for a birthday party this weekend for the 8-year-old. She'll be 9, and then we've got this football game that's taking place down here that everybody's so excited about.
Absolutely, they're excited. So Savannah Lee Richardson was on from Bulldog Illustrated. She's a bit curious about why everybody would be so excited since Georgia's far superior in terms of talent, supposedly, and the recruiting rankings would tell us that they are and what they accomplished last year. But there's reason to get excited when you win 3, then 6, then 9, and you're considered the second best team in the division, and you've got that shot, especially at home, to knock off the number 1 team in the division in the conference last year. That's cause for excitement.
Well, there's a lot of cause for excitement when you look at this game, and a lot of it has to do with South Carolina trying to prove themselves in the East, trying to prove that they are the challenger, not just for 2018, but for years to come. When it comes to superiority in the East, we saw this in the 90s with Florida and Tennessee. In the 2000s, it was Tennessee and Georgia, Tennessee and Florida a little bit. In the earlier part of this decade, it was Georgia and South Carolina. Now there's kind of a void. South Carolina trying to fill that void to compete with Georgia. And certainly when you get a home game with an experienced team like South Carolina, a team that's played Georgia fairly strong the last 2 years, you see an opportunity early in the season. Georgia trying to figure out things at that linebacker position, maybe a chance for South Carolina to exploit some weaknesses there and maybe pull the upset on Saturday and not just announce itself to the SEC, but announce itself to the nation as well.
So in week number 1, of course, a victory in that one over Coastal Carolina, 49-15. Of course, we kind of try to assess those kind of performances against that level of competition a certain way. Is there anything you can draw from what you saw in week 1?
For me, no, I wasn't. The tempo of the offense, I think, was about what we expected. South Carolina didn't need to line up and do any gadgetry or any trickery to knock off Coastal Carolina. They were simply better on the line of scrimmage, and they were able to run the ball effectively. Jake Bentley looked to show some poise in the pocket and looked good on some of his passes. They completed them to 11 different receivers. I know we saw 7 catches for Deebo Samuel, but certainly you saw the ball mixed around to Shi Smith and Brian Edwards as well. So a lot of people getting involved in the offense. But I've been saying this since January, since Brian McClendon was promoted, since Dan Werner was hired. This is the week we find out all about these changes to the South Carolina offensive staff. If what Will Muschamp has been saying is going to come to fruition, we find out this week his mindset in terms of offense. Is he really willing to let Brian McClendon and this offensive staff cut loose and go full bore? Or does he still believe it's conservative offense and great defense that wins football games?
Will Gunter joins us from 107.5 The Game in Columbia. South Carolina taking on Georgia, of course, in Columbia. Big SEC Eastern Division showdown. So the running back distribution, another hot topic for us during the entire offseason, Will, went Rico Dowdle 15, Tyson Williams 11, A.J. Turner 2 against Coastal Carolina. Any indication there of what that's going to be in a big game like this?
The only surprise there was that A.J. Turner only got 2 carries. I thought that he may have gotten more. A.J. Turner is a very quality back and very capable of leading that offense if necessary. But Rico Dowdle is going to be the bell cow of the offense. He's going to be the workhorse. And if South Carolina is going to be successful on Saturday, he's going to need to run the football and run it efficiently. That doesn't mean Rico Dowdle has to end up with 100 yards. That doesn't mean the team needs to go out and run for 200 yards. But South Carolina's got to be efficient and it's got to take advantage of running situations. When Georgia knows South Carolina's going to line up and run the football, that's when they've got to be able to do it. And it's going to start with Rico Dowdle. That's the guy that Will Muschamp and Bobby Bentley and the offensive staff believe is their best running back. That's why you saw him get the number of carries he did on Saturday, and that's why you're going to see him be the guy they go to in critical situations this coming Saturday if they need a yard or two.
You probably caught what Deebo Samuel's response was about DeAndre Baker. Doesn't know he exists.
Yeah, I'm sure that went over real well in the locker room with Will Muschamp, who's, very limits what people say already. So I'm sure that was but maybe he really didn't know. Sometimes I think we naturally assume that these kids are in tune with every player out there. And, Deebo Samuel's main focus has just been getting back for that first game. And now you've got DeAndre Baker. And, how many times will they get matched up on one another? Who knows? We'll see. Are they going to have Baker shadow Samuel all over the field? One thing that they did on Saturday is move Deebo Samuel into a running back position one time and just straight hand it to him like a running back. Does Brian McClendon find different ways to line him up and find mismatches on Saturday afternoon?
So you bring up a good point in that everybody's different when it comes to that. We hear that from coaches as well. Sometimes you can tell the coach is a college football junkie. He's keeping up with everything, even outside of his program, as much as he can. Other coaches are so tunnel visioned, unless the guy's about to win a Heisman. Hey, he knows they're really good players from watching them on game film against the other best teams in the conference. So he knows 82 is really good and 33 is really good, but that's all he knows. The number on the back, because they need to identify him in the scheme when they game plan. But he doesn't know that that's Thompson and that's Smith and that's whoever. And the same thing with these players. Some of them probably keep up, watch what else is going on. And others are just like, hey, I got other stuff going on in my life. I play video games. I listen to music, and, I don't care. I know that there are dudes over there that can play. And that's all I know. Unless I played against them in high school, I can't be bothered with it.
Well, and remember, Deebo Samuel didn't play in this game last year.
Yep.
And like you said, he might know if they'd have said DeAndre Baker's number, maybe he would have known that. But let's remember, Deebo Samuel didn't travel to Georgia last year. Didn't travel to Athens. That game was late in the season. Look, maybe he said it. Maybe it was a shot. Maybe it wasn't. They'll figure it out on the football field.
All right. Will Gunter, the all-new early game, 107.5 The Game, joins us on a regular basis to talk South Carolina, the SEC, the nation. I would like to tap you for some thoughts across the football landscape. But before we do that, just in your thoughts entering this game last year and what you saw on the field between South Carolina and Georgia in Athens. So if Vegas means anything, they consider this maybe a 7-point swing because it's about 3 to 3.5 points for home field. So if you switch it toward South Carolina and away from Georgia, it's a touchdown. It was a 2-touchdown game. It was certainly a game that, from my memory and watching it, Georgia controlled, but they didn't run away. South Carolina had life. They had some hope a few times in the fourth quarter when they got something going, but it was quickly snuffed out, and they lost by 2 touchdowns. So it was pretty much a solid 2-touchdown win, the type of win that you would correlate to 24-10. That's pretty much, the score was not deceiving. It was a 24-10 type game. But your thoughts about who the Gamecocks were then versus who they are now that could make the difference, and also on the Georgia side?
We don't know. It's a great question, and I know you want a better answer to that. And I'll tell you why we don't.
We don't know.
Well, and I'll tell you why. We don't. South Carolina, for 2 reasons. One, they've not performed well in big games. That if you want one major Will Muschamp flaw through 27 games counting last week, when South Carolina's been in the spotlight, be it Kentucky last year, be it the 2 Clemson games, outside of the Tennessee game, Will Muschamp's first year, when South Carolina's been in the spotlight, they don't play well.
Bowl game?
Yeah, they didn't play well for 40 minutes. They didn't play well for 40. They're down 19-3, and Michigan turns the ball over. They hit a long – South Carolina hits a long pass. Look, they rallied, and they won, and people – 9-4, and people forget the first 40 minutes of that game – it's 19-3, and it doesn't look like anybody's coming back. It's totally different. So when South Carolina's had the spotlight on them a little bit, they haven't really performed. So that's question number 1. How does this team perform with the spotlight on them on Saturday? Number 2 is, again, you said, how has this team changed? That's a great question. Is this offense – I'll go back to it. Georgia's got deficiencies on defense. That doesn't mean they're not talented. And let's be perfectly clear. You can have deficiencies and be inexperienced, but be talented. Georgia is ultra talented, but Tyson Campbell at one cornerback spot is a true freshman who's never played on the road. You've got 4 linebackers back there who are starting in their second game. You've taken away Roquan Smith and Davin Bellamy, taken away a lot of leadership. Lorenzo Carter, you take away right now, it looks like Jonathan Ledbetter, the nose tackle, is going to be out potentially with an ankle injury. We don't know what Georgia's defense is going to be, and South Carolina's offense is explosive enough to take advantage of deficiencies. When you look at the receivers, when you look at the offensive line, when you look at a guy who started now 21 games in Jake Bentley, but can they do it? Can Jake Bentley hit the big pass when it's there? We haven't seen him do it. Last year he's got Hayden Hurst running down the middle of the field on the opening drive against Clemson, and he overthrows him. Last year he had Brian Edwards open late. It would have opened late in the first half. It would have tied the ball game in Athens going into halftime, and he got his arm hit, and he throws an interception. When the big play's there, can Jake Bentley hit it? We don't know that. Doing it against Coastal Carolina and doing it against Georgia are 2 entirely different things. So we're going to learn a lot about South Carolina on Saturday when the spotlight's on them. And again, it comes back to Dan Werner. Remember this stat. Dan Werner's 3-3 against Kirby Smart defenses, but has won the last 3 at Ole Miss versus Alabama. And not only that, which there's a reason Nick Saban brought Dan Werner on staff as an offensive analyst. One of the offensive coordinators who got the best of Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, was Dan Werner at Ole Miss with Bo Wallace and Chad Kelly, putting up 23, 34, and I think 41 points in 3 straight years, something in that range. But remember that, because Dan Werner is going to be sitting next to Brian McClendon on Saturday, and they might not win, but Dan Werner seems to have a number there on Kirby Smart's defense. I think this turns into a high-scoring game. But in terms of how these two teams are different, Georgia's got to find some experience on defense, and can those young players step up offensively? I know Clemson's on the schedule later in the season. This might be the most explosive offense South Carolina plays all year. I know they lost Sony Michel and Nick Chubb. DeAndre Swift's a Heisman candidate. Jake Fromm's a year older. Mecole Hardman and Demetrius Robinson and Riley Ridley are a very good trio of wide receivers. Isaac Nada is a matchup problem in the tight end position. That offensive line is big and physical and agile. Georgia's better on offense, not as good on defense. South Carolina should be good on defense, but doesn't match up well with that offensive line. But South Carolina's offense should be better, too, and should be able to go toe-to-toe with that Georgia offense.
Pigskin Pete on the live chat. I love you, but beating Michigan is a good win. It's a quality win. Let's understand.
I agree. I didn't say it's a bad win. That's not the point. But if you watch the game for 40 minutes, South Carolina.
No. I am not arguing with you.
Yeah. No. Beating Michigan's a good win. This isn't the point. The point is, for 40 minutes of the game, I was sitting in the press box. Michigan kicked a field goal. I went back for thirds at the Outback buffet that they had back behind us. And the only reason I stayed up there was because we had Outback Steakhouse. That game for 40 minutes, South Carolina was not competitive. And then again, remember, Michigan had the turn. South Carolina scored. Michigan had the turnover. South Carolina hit a touchdown to Brian Edwards. And then South Carolina hit the big play to Shi Smith.
And even before all that happened, when it was 19-3, Michigan was like at the 3.5-yard line going in for a touchdown to make it 26-3. And then it's probably game over. And
it was 16 to 3, and they settled for the field goal to make it 19. But
there was a strip at the goal line. South Carolina made a play at the goal line that held Michigan out and recovered the ball, or it's 26-3. Regardless, got a guy on here, great guy, Pigskin Pete, joins us all the time on the live chat here, saying that's not a good win. And you understand.
He's saying it's not a good win?
He's saying it's not a good win. That was him saying it's not a good win. I was clarifying based on my perspective. Let's understand that the Clemsons and Ohio States of the world, people aren't getting wins against them. They only lose like one game a year. So nobody's winning those games. So the next tier is you're beating Michigan, you're beating LSU, you're beating Oklahoma State. Those are good wins. Those are like wins against like top 15 teams. And I know Michigan lost their first game, but they're still loaded with talent. And no, they're not exceptional. They have their problems, but it's a good win. So anyway,
it's a great win because the difference between 9-4 and 8-5 is substantial.
Yeah, it is.
I don't care who you beat. The difference between 9-4 and 8-5 is substantial. Those guys, that when they take recruits in that new football facility and they show them the trophies and they say we went from 3 wins in year 1 to 6 wins to 9 wins, no recruit goes, well, who'd you beat? They say, wow, that's a pretty good improvement. Nobody cares about that. That's
very true as well. And therefore, let's take it from that, and it's a decent segue to the SEC. Now, the conference really showed up, and Will, I got to tell you, for a guy whose home is in the South, job is in the South, heart is in the South, and everything else there in the South, you have always cut it very straight in regards to your thought process and your perspective on what you see on the field and what you project for the next year and what's fair in terms of who's got the best conference and why. And so you've been very fair about giving a claim to the ACC at times, to the Big Ten at times. Here, the SEC, it's only one game, it's only 1 week, but boy, really showed up in the big games.
Well, I was shocked by LSU. I wasn't shocked by Alabama. I was actually more surprised that Miami stunk. I still don't think LSU is a great football team. I still think that's probably an 8-4 football team when it's all said and done. I was shocked that Miami was as ill prepared as they looked. That was them and Florida State, biggest shockers of the weekend, just in terms of how they looked so unprepared to play their opening games. I still think LSU's an average team. Alabama's still the class of the league. We forget with Auburn, and Auburn's a good football team, and I think Auburn's got a great chance for the college football playoff. But Auburn needed Washington to come unglued inside the red zone, 4 different times to win that ball game. But you take it, you go to the next game, you prep for LSU next week. I think it's LSU for Auburn next week. and you get ready. But I still like Auburn. The rest of the league at Kentucky, Missouri, Arkansas, Texas A&M, South Carolina, Georgia. Who cares? It was Mississippi State puts up 63 with the backup quarterback. Florida did good things. Let's find it. Florida, Kentucky this week. That'll be intriguing. Georgia, South Carolina is intriguing. Texas A&M has to go against Clemson. We'll learn more about the league. We still know Alabama's good. I like Auburn. LSU's a good football team, but they're not a top 10 team. So that's where you're at this point in time.
So, yeah, the sample size isn't big, but if you compare it to what the other conferences did, the SEC certainly showed up in about 3 or 4 big games.
Well, they did. But again, I mean, how good is Louisville? How good is Miami going to be? Obviously, Tennessee got run out of the building. But the bottom line, again, is they looked good on opening week. And I do think the SEC is the best conference. But, I don't want to base it on one weekend. I think the coaching is getting better. I think the players are getting better. I think there's a lot of things that are an improvement for the SEC. And so I'm not basing it on 1 week, on a 1 week sample size.
Got Will Gunter on the line from 107.5 The Game. South Carolina, Georgia, week 2 matchup, a big one in the SEC Eastern Division. Anything else on the national landscape? We had football, of course, Will, last weekend from Thursday all the way running through Monday night in Tallahassee. Anything else jumped out at you?
Obviously Texas losing. Boy, the heat on Tom Herman is fascinating, especially if Jimbo Fisher can win, can pull off an upset this weekend. Can you imagine all of a sudden the kind of turnaround there? Because we know how much Texas and Texas A&M dislike each other. On the flip side of that, I thought it was a real interesting dichotomy on Saturday to see Matt Canada, who I love the post-game stuff. But Matt Canada is part of that coaching staff, remember, that was crushed by players for being verbally abusive and for creating a culture there that they didn't like. Matt Canada was part of that. And yet you couldn't fire the whole coaching staff. So I thought it was very interesting there to see Matt Canada in that role and kind of the way that was handled. But I thought it was really cool for Maryland. Michigan and Shea Patterson. Look, I like Notre Dame. I don't make too much of Michigan losing on the road. I don't worry about that. Again, the shockers of the weekend were how ill-prepared Florida State and Miami looks. Miami will bounce back. Florida State and Willie Taggart couldn't look more out of their league, in over their head in week 1. And the most embarrassing thing, if I'm a Florida State fan, is Willie Taggart, instead of just saying, hey, we got beat, he answers a question basically accusing Virginia Tech of players of laying down to slow down the game. He may very well be right. I'm not saying Virginia Tech didn't do that. It just comes off so poor if you're a Florida State fan. And Willie Taggart looks like he's in over his head right now. That Florida State team looks small. Virginia Tech looked like the bigger, more physical team there. That stood out to me. Other than that, again, I think Washington's got a chance to bounce back. I'm fascinated by Southern Cal this coming weekend with JT Daniels. I watched that Stanford game, and they finally got it going. But I like Southern Cal this weekend. And how about Kevin Sumlin going to Arizona? He's Kevin Sumlin, the guy that can stop Khalil Tate. Excellent job, Kevin Sumlin, holding one of the country's best rushing quarterbacks to 14 yards. Phenomenal job. Against
BYU.
Yeah. Excellent.
They weren't facing Clemson. It was BYU. It's funny, Will, what the folks on the chat get into, but right now they are enamored with the thought and the picture here that it's dark here and it's still fairly light and was much lighter when we started behind you. So they're conjecturing that you're on the West Coast. Okay, Will's in South Carolina. I'm in Connecticut. We're both on the East Coast. The reason it looks like this, it would normally look like that, but we had thunderstorms a couple hours ago, so it got dark quicker.
The lake is behind me. It never gets dark on the lake.
Okay.
It doesn't rain and it never gets dark on the lake.
Very nice. All right, Will, we appreciate the time, man. 107.5 The Game shows the all-new early game. And before we let you go, has everything been good? How's the show going?
Going very good. We can't complain. It's still from 6 to 9 in the morning, but can't complain at all. Very, very happy to be doing it. Staying busy. Glad it's football season.
All right. Hopefully the Gamecocks can shake things up in the SEC East. I have no rooting interest, but it would just be very interesting to see a little something different there than what the rest of us are projecting to see what will happen there in the SEC Eastern Division. So a South Carolina win would obviously really make things intriguing.
It certainly would. And again, I think for South Carolina, it's a no-lose situation. Don't get blasted 56-0. But people are expecting Georgia to win this game. If South Carolina wins it, they introduce themselves to the national landscape. If not, it's a couple weeks before South Carolina gets a national game. So certainly a big one for South Carolina, but one that I think as long as they play competitively and it continues to show growth for Will Muschamp in this program.
All right, Will, you have a good night. We'll see you soon.
Great talking to you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, sir. So Will Gunter from 107.5 The Game. And we will be around for much of the night as I get my set in order. Here's the deal. At 8:30 Eastern time, we've got Corey Peters on from Cyclones Podcast for a first appearance on Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, to set us up for Iowa State going to Iowa to take on the Hawkeyes. Both teams, well, of course, Iowa State didn't play this week. Iowa did win over Northern Illinois. Then for 2 consecutive guests, we talk nothing but USC football with the Trojans preparing for the Stanford Cardinal on the road. Scott Wolf joins us, and also Alicia De Artolo from Reign of Troy. In the meantime, if you guys want to kick it around here for the next few minutes, I will take phone calls, or we'll just talk up college football week 2. I'll run down the games. Let's give it a look here. The phone number is 860-325-3687. That's 860-325-3687. As we've got no Thursday night football in the college ranks, the Eagles and the Falcons get it on tonight. They kick off in just a few minutes. Tomorrow night, TCU warms up for Ohio State with an early week game against SMU on the road, so they'll have an extra day to prepare for the Buckeyes. On Saturday, our noon games include Wisconsin hosting New Mexico. We've got Mississippi State at Kansas State, so most likely that's going to be my primary game, Mississippi State, Kansas State at noon Eastern time on Saturday. I'll lock in on that one. And then let's see, Western Michigan, Towson taking on Wake. Eastern Michigan goes to Purdue. We've got Vandy taking on Nevada. Houston, Arizona. Okay, here's my secondary game at noon, and then also my third choice. Right here at noon, we've got an ACC Big Ten battle with Northwestern taking on Duke in Evanston. Of course, the Dukies blasted Northwestern last season 41-17. And then the noon game on ABC or ESPN2 is South Florida taking on Georgia Tech. Intriguing ACC game against one of the top Group of 5 programs. So those are my 3 to watch at noon, with, again, Kansas State hosting Mississippi State. We've got Duke, Northwestern, and South Florida, Georgia Tech. Also, you may want to opt for Houston hosting Arizona as well. At 1 o'clock on Fox, that's 1 o'clock Eastern time, UCLA trying to lick its wounds and head out to Norma to take on the Sooners. Virginia Tech, my number 2 team in the country right now. And if you're joining me for the first time and have not heard my rankings or the explanation on the rankings, I know that sounds crazy, but there's a reason for it. Virginia Tech at number 2, taking on William and Mary. Let's see if we've got any other decent afternoon games. Then it comes down to that 3:30 showdown for the SEC Eastern Division lead with Georgia and South Carolina. Ohio State hosts Rutgers on the Big Ten Network. We've got Nebraska and Colorado in Lincoln at 3:30 Eastern time on ABC. Navy and Memphis, a really strong American Conference game that typically weighs into the conference championship race. A little bit later in the day, we also have a lot of lightweight games with a lot of the top 25 teams playing nobody until 7 o'clock Eastern time. ESPN, Clemson, Texas A&M in College Station. And then, of course, later at the night, we've got an interesting game here with the Cowboys of Wyoming going to Mizzou to take on the Tigers. And that's pretty much it for the night, although we've got an SEC affair with Kentucky and Florida going at it in Gainesville, with, of course, Kentucky trying to break the longest streak in the nation against one opponent. The ABC game on Saturday night is Penn State at Pitt. We also have Fresno State and Minnesota. Could be trouble for the Gophers in that one. All right, let's take a phone call. Oh, it dropped on me. So whoever just called, please call back. I don't know why the line dropped on us there. All right, Tulsa, Texas, also playing on Saturday night. We've got Stanford, USC. I'll be all over that one at 8:30 Eastern time. And anything late night? Oh, yes, definitely. Michigan State at Arizona State, 10:45 Eastern time, which means I'm going to be up mighty late on Saturday night. But love that Michigan State, Arizona State game after the Sun Devils showed us something against Texas San Antonio and just blasting UTSA in week 1. UConn, Boise State, an ESPNU game that night, as well as Cal and BYU after the Cougars came up with a big win following their awful 4-9 campaign last year in defeating Arizona, as Will mentioned this past week. All right. So this is a live stream that focuses on Georgia and South Carolina. We're going to shut this one down if I don't receive any phone calls here in the next minute or two, and come back at 8:30 with the Iowa State preview featuring Corey Peters of Cyclones podcast. And then at 9 o'clock Eastern time, USC fans, get locked and loaded for USC football talk with first Scott Wolf, then Alicia DeArtola, USC Stanford preview right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And maybe we'll take some calls as well. We will see you guys at 8:30 Eastern time.